On Thanksgiving, I refused to co-sign my brother's loan. Furious, he flipped the table and shouted, "You owe me after everything I sacrificed." Our dad backed him up, yelling, "You're just selfish." Stunned, I whispered, "You never cared about me." But when his secret business deal was exposed, they realized who the real manipulator was. Thanksgiving has always been a big deal in our family. Every year, we gather at my parents' house in suburban Ohio. Mom cooks up a storm, Dad carves the turkey, and we all pretend to be one big happy family. But this year was different. My brother, Mark, had been acting strange for weeks. He kept hinting at some big news he wanted to share during Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't think much of it, assuming it was just another one of his get-rich-quick schemes. As we sat down to eat, Mark stood up and clinked his glass. "I have an announcement," he said, beaming. He went on to explain that he was starting a new business venture and needed a loan to get it off the ground. The catch? He needed someone to co-sign the loan. "I was hoping you'd help me out," he said, looking directly at me. I was stunned. Co-signing a loan is a big responsibility, and I wasn't comfortable with it. "I'm sorry, Mark, but I can't do that," I replied. The room fell silent. Mark's face turned red. He slammed his fist on the table, causing the dishes to rattle. "You owe me after everything I sacrificed," he shouted. Dad jumped in, yelling, "You're just selfish." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had always been the responsible one, the one who helped out whenever needed. And now, I was being attacked for setting a boundary. "You never cared about me," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. I left the dinner early, feeling hurt and betrayed. I didn't speak to my family for weeks. But then, something unexpected happened. I received a call from a mutual friend who told me that Mark's business deal had fallen through. Apparently, he had been involved in some shady dealings, and the whole thing had blown up in his face. Suddenly, the narrative changed. My parents reached out, apologizing for their behavior and acknowledging that I had been right all along. It wasn't easy, but over time, we began to rebuild our relationships. I learned the importance of setting boundaries and standing up for myself, even when it's uncomfortable. And my family learned that respect goes both ways. Thanksgiving will never be the same, but perhaps that's a good thing. We've moved past the facade of perfection and embraced the messy, complicated reality of being a family. And in doing so, we've found a deeper, more authentic connection. After Mark's deal crashed, I thought it was over. He went quiet. Our parents, especially Dad, were embarrassed. They tried to patch things up like nothing happened, like the table wasn't flipped, like no one had screamed that I was selfish. But I felt it in the air. That quiet tension. That pause before another blow-up. I wasn't crazy, just cautious. Then came Christmas. A week before Christmas, I got a thick envelope from a lawyer's office in Cleveland. At first, I thought maybe it was junk. But when I opened it, my hands started to shake. Mark had put my name as a co-signer anyway. On a different loan. $75,000. I nearly passed out. I never signed anything. But the signature was there. My name. My handwriting. My full legal info. It was forged. I drove straight to my parents' house. Snow was falling. My boots were soaking wet by the time I got to the door. Mark opened it. His face went pale when he saw the envelope in my hand. "You did this?" I asked, my voice low and shaking. "It's not what you think," he muttered, stepping back. Dad stood up from the couch. "What's going on?" I handed him the papers. He forged my name. Put me on a $75,000 loan. Dad stared at Mark. "Is this true?" Mark didn't answer. "Is this true?" he shouted. Mark still didn't say a word. Turns out, Mark had gotten desperate. His business was more of a mess than anyone knew. He had taken out multiple loans. One of them used my name. Another used Dad's name. He forged both. The silence that filled the house was worse than the yelling. Worse than the table flip. Worse than everything. Dad told Mark to leave. Mom cried so hard, I thought she might collapse. And me? I called a lawyer. The court process was long. Painful. I had to prove the signature wasn't mine. We got a handwriting expert. They confirmed it was forged. But here's the twist. It wasn't just Mark behind it. The documents had been notarized by a friend of Mark's. A guy named Kyle. A guy we used to play video games with as teenagers. He worked at a bank now. And apparently, Mark promised him a cut if everything worked out. Kyle got arrested. Mark got charged with fraud. And the whole story hit the local paper. People in town started whispering. Our family wasn't that good family from the corner lot anymore. We were that family, the one with the fraud case in the newspaper article. I stopped going to church for a while. Couldn't stand the stairs. Dad couldn't look people in the eye. Mom stopped hosting her book club. Mark's girlfriend left him. His friends? Gone. Then, one night in February, Mark showed up at my door. I didn't open it. Just looked at him through the peephole. He was thinner, worn out. His hoodie was wet from the rain. He didn't knock. He just stood there. After a few minutes, he slid a note under the door and walked away. I opened it. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of it. I messed up. I folded the note and tucked it in the back of my drawer. I didn't know what to do with it yet. A month later, Mom told me they were thinking of selling the house. The memories had turned sour. She said she cried every time she walked past the dining room table. Dad took early retirement. Said he was tired. I just want peace, he muttered one afternoon. They weren't the same anymore. I guess none of us were. Then came another twist. Grandma passed away in April, and when her will was read, everyone got something except Mark. The lawyer explained it plainly. She was aware of the fraud charges. She altered her will shortly before passing. Mark didn't even show up to the reading. But later that night, I got another note. You're happy now, aren't you? 2 weeks after Grandma's will was read, I got another visit. But this time, it wasn't Mark. It was a woman, late 30s, short dark hair, sharp eyes. Are you my name? She asked. Yes. I need to talk to you. It's about Mark. I didn't let her in. Just stood half behind the door. I'm his ex. From Phoenix. We have a kid together. My stomach dropped. Her name was Selena. She had met Mark 6 years ago at a conference in Arizona. They'd been together for 2 years before he ghosted her completely. But that's not the twist. Their son? 9 years old. And she showed me a paternity test. Mark was the father. I nearly choked. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because he listed you as his emergency contact when he got arrested. And now Child Services is trying to find a guardian if he gets jail time. Just when I thought the chaos had reached its peak, I found out about another loan. This one wasn't forged. It was legit. Mark had taken it out under his name but had listed my address as the billing address. Late notices were coming to me. And worse, collections had started calling my phone. Apparently, he used an old driver's license with my address still on it. I spent weeks straightening it out, proving I had nothing to do with it. I changed my number, got a P.O. box, locked everything down. Then, as if life hadn't thrown enough curveballs, Mom got sick. Cancer. Stage 2. Dad called me one night in a panic. I drove over immediately. Mark showed up, too quiet, eyes red. He sat in the corner of the hospital room. Mom smiled weakly when she saw both of us. She held my hand. Then she looked at Mark. I want to go home. I want one dinner. Just like before. Dad whispered, Thanksgiving. She nodded. We did it. Somehow. Everyone came to me, Dad, even Mark. It was strange, forced, full of unspoken words. We sat around the same table that once got flipped. No yelling this time, but also no warmth. After dinner, Mom asked us to sit. She pulled out 2 letters from her purse. One for each of you. Read them after I'm gone. None of us said a word. 3 weeks after that dinner, Mom passed in her sleep. She was calm, peaceful. When we went through her things, Dad found something unexpected in her old desk drawer. A bank statement. A hidden account. Over $120,000 in it. Money none of us knew existed. The account had my name listed as co-owner. I called the bank. They confirmed it. Mom had set it up in my name 5 years ago. Apparently, she had been saving silently, maybe because she knew what Mark might become. The next day, Mark showed up, angry and wild-eyed. You always win. You always get everything. Even now. I handed him her letter. He read it in silence. Then he sank to the floor. I waited a week before opening mine. Mom's handwriting was neat. Careful. She wrote about the early days, about how proud she was of both of us. But then came this line. You always carried the burden, even when no one saw. This is my way of saying, I saw you. I always saw you. I cried harder than I had in years. 2 months later, Mark accepted a plea deal. 6 months in county jail, 2 years probation. He sent me one final message. Don't wait for me. Don't try to fix me. I have to rebuild on my own. And then silence. After Mark went to jail, things slowed down. Dad and I weren't close. We saw each other out of duty, not warmth. He mostly stayed home, sat in front of the TV. A man worn thin by decades of family damage he refused to face. I threw myself into work. Avoided people. Friends faded away. Trust? That word meant nothing anymore. I was rich in money, thanks to Mom's hidden savings, but bankrupt in peace. One stormy spring night, I went in my parents' attic. Just cleaning things out, nothing serious. But then I found a dusty shoebox taped shut. Inside? Letters. From Grandma. To me. Dozens of them. Unsent. Most were warm, filled with childhood memories, praise. But some were filled with regret. Your father made mistakes. And I turned a blind eye. I raised him to be proud, not kind. Mark needed help. Instead, we gave him pressure. And this one, if you're reading this, it means your brother broke. And maybe you're angry. But don't let revenge become your comfort. It's cold company. I stared at those words for hours. Months later, while helping Dad sort papers for taxes, I found another will. Signed and dated 2 weeks before Grandma died. Different from the one the lawyer read. This one included Mark. In fact, it gave Mark the house. I confronted Dad. I tore it up, he admitted. You did what? I knew what Mark had done. I didn't want him rewarded. You lied to the lawyer? I did what a father should have done years ago. Mark got out that summer. Slimmer. Quieter. Worn. He didn't come to see us. Just sent a message. I'm out. I'm clean. I'm starting over. But then he found out about the house. He showed up at Dad's porch one morning with a copy of the real will. Yes. Mark had a copy too. I want what's mine. Dad said no. Mark filed a lawsuit. This time, it wasn't about loans. It was blood against blood. Mark won the case. The will was valid. The lawyer was forced to accept it. But then Mark did something no one expected. He evicted our father. I got the call from Dad at 8 a.m. They're giving me 30 days to leave. You're joking. I wish. Mark didn't respond to my texts. I showed up at the house. He opened the door. You're throwing him out. Mark stared at me, calm. Cold. You let him lie. You watched me fall. You all played clean while I was drowning. I looked around. The house that raised us. What's your plan, Mark? Live here alone with your ghosts. He didn't answer. A week later, Mark posted on Facebook. Something cryptic. Everyone pays. Eventually. 2 days later, his new car was torched in the driveway. Police came. Cameras showed a figure in a hoodie, late at night. They questioned Dad. Then me. I swore I had nothing to do with it. But Dad? He stayed quiet. Police searched Dad's place. Found burner phones. A journal entry with Mark's address circled. He was arrested. Mark didn't press charges. But it was done. Our family was shattered. Dad ended up moving into a tiny apartment. Alone. Mark sold the house 6 months later and vanished. And me? I stayed in Ohio. Built walls higher than houses. Didn't speak to either of them again. Here's the truth. Mark lied, stole, and hurt people, but he was broken early. Dad enabled it, then covered it. I let it all boil over for years. I held my tongue to keep peace. And by the time I finally spoke, it was too late. This story doesn't end with a warm hug. There's no family photo on the mantle. No holiday card. Just a memory of a table flipped and everything that came crashing after. Sometimes the real revenge isn't loud. It's silence. It's knowing you could fix something, but you choose to walk away. And you never look back.